My name is Reese. Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be here because it's the home of a lot of my favorite people. The title of my presentation is, it's about trust and in marketing, and between the guys at My Social Practice and Greg and Steve, they're people that I definitely have a lot of respect for because they've garnered that trust through what I've observed them do, and I think it's really important to be able to, I just really enjoy this conference because I feel like it's really focused on education and it's really focused on improving the dental industry from a lot of different directions. So I'm the CEO of a company called Dentist Advisors, and I get the unique opportunity to get feedback from both, since I don't work with non-dentists, we work with just dentists as our customers, but all of my friends who are not dentists know that I work with all these dentists. And so when they need a dentist, they usually come to me and say, you know all these dentists, like who should I go work with? And I get a lot of good feedback that you probably wouldn't get from your patients directly. And a couple weeks ago, I got an interesting audio message from one of my friends who I had referred to a dentist, and this is the message that he left me.
The dentist you recommended, it's interesting because I feel like he's upselling and selling me stuff that I don't need. Like my wife has like a small crack in one of her teeth, and he was like, "Oh, I definitely would get a crown on that." I told her like, "Yeah, you should get a second opinion." So she went to another dentist, and the dentist was like, "Is it bothering you?" And she's like, "No." The dentist is like, "Well, then I wouldn't get it fixed." A year ago, they recommended I do like this root planing stuff. So I did that, then I came back in today, and now I'm on like this I have to do root planing maintenance. So instead of just getting a cleaning and a checkup, I ended up having to pay more money because now I'm in a maintenance thing. And I called another dentist, and they're like, "Well, that's kind of normal billing cycle of you had the root planing, and they're going to do more checks and a deeper cleaning or whatever." And then at the end of our visit, he was like, "Oh, your tongue is like too big for your mouth." Then he's selling this new product that like expands your mouth, changes your breathing pathway or whatever. And he's doing this like seminar tomorrow night and having food or whatever. But anyway, dentists are now selling the sleep apnea cure thing that they can do a CT scan and then change your airway and stuff. And I was kind of like, I've never had any dentist say that your tongue's too big for your mouth and that you have a small opening airway and that we need to expand your mouth. And then, oh, by the way, we have a seminar tomorrow night. Anyway, I like totally just turned me off of like not trusting, especially after the experience with my wife. And then when I was there before with like recommendation for root planning, and I was like, really? Do I really need that? It seems like he's pushing to make a lot more money and he's using this product he wants to sell. And I don't know, I just didn't feel like there was any conservatism in like, he seems to like, he's got a machine on site to do crowns and he was pushing my wife to get a crown. I don't know how many dentists end up like this where they're pushing like lots of product and while we were there, they're going as a company, they're going on a cruise, like, and our hygienist was explaining like, oh, if we meet certain goals, then we all get to go on this cruise. And then she turned into like another salesperson for this thing for my, supposedly I have sleep apnea. Oh, and then he's like, oh, by the way, I have this machine you can take home to test sleep apnea. Anyway, my dentist visits turned into like, it felt like a multi-level marketing thing. I don't know, like, I mean, I'm not mad at you for recommending him or anything like that. I was like, as a dental advisor now, like, are all these guys just going to push crap on their clients? And like, it seems like he's doing not conservative dentistry and like pushing a bunch of stuff on unnecessarily. Anyway, that was my experience and wondered like, maybe this is an idea for a podcast for you.
So I happen to know the dentist that really well that he went to, and I know this person is like the epitome of cautious diagnosis, and I know this customer, this patient, I know he's super, let's say frugal, and he doesn't, he wouldn't take advice to do almost anything, right, that costs any money. So you have this, like, I know the dentist that he's talking to, and I know him, and I know that there's just this, like, confusing mess going on. And it's not really, like, what he thinks is happening is not what's happening. But I've talked to both of these since then. I got permission from the dentist to use this case and permission from this patient, except he told me, you got to mask my voice. I don't want him to know it's me, right? Because I still like him so much, right? Like, he still likes this dentist, but he's not willing to tell him this. He's coming to me, and he's okay if I share this case study as long as I mask his voice and make it so he's not intelligible. And then the dentist is like, I'm totally fine with you sharing this. I really hope it helps the industry and it makes it all better. But man, like, I really hope he knows how much I care. It's just really interesting to see this trust gap. Here's another example that I think I can relate to this quite a bit, and I'll show you why. This is a Google search on my phone. If you type in dentists are, these are the first recommended things that show up, all right? I kind of like sadists. I was like, that's an interesting one, you know? Okay, let's see which one's worse, financial advisors or dentists. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, financial advisors are a joke, crooks, salesmen, they're bad. There's like, I could do this with a lot of occupations, just happens to be these are my two that kind of affect my life the most, and I think we're particularly affected by this. But what happens is anytime you're delivering something that has to be done, it's hard to come across as a consultant. Even though, like, I'm a fee-only fiduciary and I get paid from the client. I don't sell insurance. I don't sell, products. I get paid a fee from the client directly. I'm still struggling with this, right? And I've had to find. I would say I'm not struggling with this, but my industry is struggling with this. I think we've found ways over the last 15 years to really help us not be perceived in this way. But it was a real process, because the first few years, you're just kind of like, why does everyone think I'm a crook? Like, I was a music major, and I was like really admired, and then when I decided to go into finance for my graduate degree, now I'm like a crook. I'm like, I want to go back to music. I'm like the nice guy in music, but in finance, you're a crook. And so in dentistry and in finance, you're like delivering a service, like a thing that you want people to do. You're not just a consultant. You're kind of a consultant which I like because we get stuff done, right? Like sometimes just advice goes nowhere. Like I invest people's money. We get them to refinance debt. We fix their taxes. But with that comes some baggage. In dentistry, like you can't just talk to people about oral hygiene. You can't just educate on periodontal disease. You can't just talk about fillings and crowns and implants. Right? You have to do stuff, and that will come across inherently as a sale. So we have to figure out, how do we be perceived as not this, right? How do we be perceived not as a crook, and how do we be perceived as an advocate, like a friend? This example, this person had been going to this dentist 3 appointments now. This is his third recare. I guess third exam, second recare. And so he should have at this point been able to establish some level of trust. But there's some gaps. So I'm going to give you 5 quick ways I think you can build more trust, ways that I've had to learn to do this, and in an industry that has a lot of similarities to dentistry. And I hope you find these helpful. First, I put up here, you emphasizing the dentist have to explain things to people in a way that really helps them understand why you're recommending it. Now, I'm going to talk today about marketing. I'm not talking about what's going to happen in the chair. I think the most important thing here could have been solved, as we all heard. There were some major problems with both the assistant communication about the cruise, right? That was not ideal. That probably shouldn't happen. The dentist himself probably came across a little flippant when it was about the seminar, or maybe he was really rushing through the exam. There's a lot that could have happened in what I call the sales side. Sales is the one-to-one communication. I'm not going to talk about that today, but that whole side, there's experts here in this room that are really good at that. Clearly that was botched. The sales side was a problem. I'm talking about the marketing side, because that to me is something that no matter what your skill set is, like you can improve this one with a little bit of help, and you can also improve the sales side. The marketing side, I'm saying you have to explain the why. And what I mean by this is you have to create content that you have done yourself, that has your words, your ideas, your feelings, and that has to be explaining why you recommend certain things or why you believe certain things. For example, why do you recommend that people with a cracked tooth put a crown on it? Right? That might sound like intuitive, but like last night I did a presentation and I asked at the audience, there's several people there that were not dentists, and I just asked them, I said, how many of you know what periodontal disease is? There's maybe 7 or 8 people that were there that were not dentists. One of them raised their hands and said, I know what periodontal disease is. And I said, what's periodontal disease? So 90% didn't know. The one said, it's gum disease. And I said, okay, what's gum disease? And that was when it ended, right? Now no one knows. So past the name gum disease, like no one knows what that is, why it matters, how it affects your teeth, how it affects your bite, how it might affect the longevity of your complete oral health. Like I don't want to see a generic article though on someone's website. I want to see your ideas, doctor, you just click record on your phone, you talk into it for 1 minute, and this is the worst scenario possible. My social practice would help you make this much, much, much better, okay? But you just tell the camera for 1 minute why it's important to put a crown on a cracked tooth, and then post it on your personal feed, and do that every other day for a year, and you're gonna have a massive amount of trust, right? It's not that complicated. You'll feel awkward because you'll be like, well, I need a script, and it needs to be good, and I don't wanna screw it up, and I don't wanna look weird, and I need to dress right for it, but no. You just look at it, you just say it, you look weird, do it in the morning when your breath is bad and your hair is weird, and not even wearing clothes sometimes. You'll get a lot more views, all right? So I think it's really important that you have to be involved in the content creation. Here's my 2, and this last year, these are the 2 most viral pieces that have created we probably created almost $1 million of equity value in our business just from these 2 articles that I've written. One is called Why Losing 30 Pounds Reminded Me of Financial Planning. Like that, probably some of you are looking at that going, well, what did you used to weigh? What do you weigh now? How'd you lose it? What's your exercise routine, right? But, and maybe, I bet there'll be a couple people looking at this right now that would actually read this article, right? But if it was more generic, and I didn't write it, and it wasn't about me, and it wasn't my voice, it wasn't my thoughts, it will not perform as well. Now, I know it's impractical for all of you to go and become marketing agencies. But I only dedicate right now 2 hours on Tuesday and 2 hours on Thursday to write content. That's all I dedicate. And from those 4 hours a week, we publish a massive amount of content. Okay, I started with 1 part-time employee in marketing, and now I have 8 full-time employees in marketing. But as my revenue grew, I just kept dedicating the same amount of my revenue to that role, and after a while, you end up with a really big marketing program. You can do that with a consultant, you can do that with an agency, you can do that with a subcontractor. You just need to dedicate an amount of your time, a small amount. And no one here can say that they don't have 4 hours a week to dedicate to sharing your ideas about whatever you think will make your patients more educated about the why. Second, this article I wanted to show you too. This was the other one that was the second most valuable one. It was called Buy a House or Grow a Practice. And I had to go through this hard lesson of learning what is the time in your life to take money and enjoy your life with it and buy a house or remodel your house versus keep putting it back into the business. And all that I learned from that. And why I might recommend somebody hold off for a while, or why I might recommend they actually do go ahead and move forward with the house. These are just 2 things that weren't very critical, but we have probably 19,000 dentists read this article over the last 3 months. And that generated almost, probably $30,000 to $40,000 of recurring ongoing service. Our clients pay anywhere from $195 a month to $500 a month. And that's the amount. We generated a significant amount of revenue just from people reading that article and then starting to get into our campaign from that point. Second, be transparent, okay? Transparency is really critical. I like to do that. We do that through this podcast that we have. It's called The Dentist Money Show. I think you can do it through in-office conversations. This is one way we do it. We don't hold anything back. We just share our truth about everything and hope that people can either use that truth, in your case, to improve their relationship with their existing dentist or consider working with you as an option. We also disclose all of our fees and have really transparent fee conversations. So we're not afraid to address fees. For you, this will be a little bit more difficult to just put all your fees on your website. But the day about 5 years ago when we just posted all of our fees and just made it be really easy to understand is the day that our phone started to ring a lot more. And I think even if you don't know exactly how you're going to do that, whether it's in a sales situation, in a consult, or whether it's through your media, your content, you have to be more transparent with how you get paid, how insurance works, if you're dependent on PPOs, how that kind of affects how you get paid, and how you're trying to do what's best for the patient by navigating this difficult world. There's a lot of conversations that people in this room are much more skilled and trained to have with you than I am, but I just know that transparency around fees really matters, and not holding anything back about what you believe, what you think, even if that means they work with another provider. Third, emphasize an evidence-based approach. You need to focus on not just having everything you say come across as hearsay or conjecture or opinion. So in this case that we played that audio sample of, the person said, "Your tongue is too big," right? That context, starting that conversation with that comment is not coming from a place of evidence-based research, right? You'd want to start that conversation much differently. And many of you here understand much better than I do exactly how you would phrase that. And guess how you'd bring that topic up, how you'd start the conversation. We do this a lot. You can't see the slide very well, but on our website we have a ton of academic research that supports our methodology, how we do certain things, how we invest money, why we pay down debt the way we pay down debt, how we manage taxes the way we do. These are, on the right-hand side, it's a bunch of academics, and on the left-hand side, it's a bunch of quotes. And we just have a lot of links to studies and surveys and information that support our approach. The more you're perceived as a doctor and as an academic and as someone who's well-researched and thorough and less as a salesperson, the more you gain trust, okay? Fourth, demonstrate objectivity. I feel like the best way to demonstrate objectivity is to tell people when you don't have what they need, right? Or when someone else might be another resource that you could bring into their life. Might be a piece of content. In my case, these two pieces of content are good examples. Are you paying for generic advice that you could get for free? Well, people pay me for advice, so I'm kind of putting my advice in question if I'm going to have an open discussion about whether financial advisors are worth paying for, right? But during this piece of content, I'm talking about the differences between free advice and paid advice and how much advice should cost and whether it's worth it. And that allows people to gain a lot of trust because I'm not doing this with any hidden agenda, right? Same thing on why owning a practice might not be for you, this other piece. I'm having a conversation that could put my business in jeopardy because my future largely depends on the health of the dental industry and practice ownership and people wanting to go into the industry. But I'm having an open conversation here about why students or why residents may want to reconsider their career choice given the future dynamics of the industry and who it's good for and who it might not be good for. This really puts my business in jeopardy, but it also makes the people that listen to me go, he's going to say something that I trust because he's willing to be put himself in a position where he might not be the answer for what I need. Think about how that might apply to you. Fifth, I think it's really important to set really clear expectations and meet them. We have a really concrete process where we'll say, we do this in January, and this is going to happen in February, and this is going to happen in March. This like calendar wheel here is a periodic table of financial elements that we designed, and it helps rank and compare dentists to each other so that when we give advice, we're using this academic approach that's really data-driven. We're not just saying you should save more money or you should pay down debt faster. We're saying your debt-to-income ratio is 29%. So buying that building would put your debt-to-income ratio at 34, and we don't recommend going that high. That's why we're not recommending you buy the building right now until your collections go up another 100,000, at which case you'd be able to afford that comfortably, right? We're using academics, and we're using a really clear approach that we set, and then we follow through with it and execute. I think that most people really resonate with that. As long as you set the expectations and are real clear about them, you're going to have good results. Last quote, this is my daughter, and she's a lot of fun. Finally had a girl after 4 kids. Well, 3 kids, I got boy, 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 and I was about to quit, and we just tried one more time. We got the girl. So yeah, she's spoiled. She is. Trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication. It's the foundational principle that holds all relationships. I think if you just remember that your patient sometimes is a little bit intimidated, sometimes they're scared, and they definitely don't trust you if the first time that you're having difficult conversation with them is when they're in the chair. It needs to start before the chair. It needs to start in the marketing process. It's got to start before they get in that moment. But if you can get to the point to where they see that you really are this counselor, this trusted decision maker, this person that's co-managing the decision-making process with them, you have a massive amount of trust. And it's worked for me, and I hope it works for you. Thanks.